What's up, lads? Welcome to the BetterMan YouTube channel. This is going to be my first video, long form. I'm very excited about doing a bit more in-depth videos here on YouTube, and I hope that you lads will follow me the way you have been on TikTok and also spread the word for the men out there that need help understanding the world of women, understand the world at large, deep Jungian psychology, Schopenhauerian philosophy, all mixed up and mashed up into the BetterMan philosophy of my life experience as an older gentleman that is here to help you lot figure out your own purpose and mission in the world, and to understand the world of women and understand your role as a man in 2025 and what masculinity really means. So without further ado, let's get into this first video. What you have to understand about all women is that they lie. And I'm not talking about some women, I'm talking about all women. Women have developed a strategy through manipulation that has come via evolution, generations and generations of evolution and survival in a very violent and scary world of the physical world, of the men's world. Women historically had no power in the physical space because women are, as we know, physically weaker than men. Women's survival strategy had to be very different than men's survival, meaning us men, we deal in the physical world and we understand the consequences of the physical world. There is a code that we as men live by. We know that if we push a man too far, that there's a consequence to pushing up against that man, which will be ultimately violence. And we as men have to gauge whether we're in a scenario, whether we can protect ourselves and potentially even win a fight with that man, or if we're going to get our ass kicked by that man. And if we think we're going to get our ass kicked by that man, we won't actually escalate beyond a certain level with that man. If we're arguing with him, if we're having a difference of opinion, most of the time we're very, very conscious of the consequences of pushing up too far and being disrespectful to that man. It's all very overt and direct because we're living in the moment of consequence to our actions. And so it's only when men get really triggered and really sort of taken off guard, and also if alcohol's involved and they're sort of out of their normal perception of what's going on around them, they can end up getting into fights and violent things like that. And that's the way of the men. That's the code of the men. It's conversation, it's discussion, it's argument. The argument escalates, it's shouting, it's yelling, and then it goes to violence. And that is the code of the men. Now, women don't operate on those same rules of engagement. And because of that, they've had to develop a whole other strategy in order to not just survive, but thrive and have power in the world where there is no physical power. And that is why you must fully understand this concept about women and lying. And so when I say all women lie, I am happy to say that all women lie. Now, how do they lie is different and nuanced. But the one thing that they have perfected over men is the art of half-truths, okay? And half-truths are how you manipulate people on a very nuanced, high level. Because this happens a lot in propaganda, for example, in like governments and propaganda and all that stuff. They give you the truth, but they either mix it with lies or they withhold some of the story, some of the truth. So you're only getting that half truth. And this is very, 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 very effective when it comes to manipulation, when it comes to getting people to agree to things that they wouldn't normally agree to. and ultimately getting people to submit into your frame. And women do this instinctually, okay? So as we see here, first on the list is evolution. And so they lie through evolution. They evolved to manipulate men, particularly in the frame of relationships, in order to get the man they want, okay? When women want something, they don't enforce their wants and needs on the man. They get the man to do it for them. They get the man to think that he has decided on some sort of decision that actually suits the woman, but they'll make him think that he thought of it, okay? And that is a classic example of how women manipulate men, is that they make men think that they're in charge when really the women are in charge, or at least the women are dictating their desires, wants, and needs through the smoke and mirrors of manipulation. And that initially was done on an evolutionary level because women needed men to survive, like in the basics of just sort of physical protection, provisions, hunting, shelter, all that sort of stuff. That was generated by men. And ultimately the women's role was to find the best possible man that will give them the most likely outcome of survival, coupled with instinctual genetic alignment, okay? Meaning the instinct of what you think and what we all have decided is love, I believe, and this is a Schopenhauer thing, but that's nature's trick. It's a instinctual biological trick to bring you together with a member of the opposite sex to procreate. And so the programming of the human woman is attracted to certain traits that are so deep within her that are happening automatically to get her to be attracted to this particular man or that particular man. She may be witnessing the man in the village being the top of the community, or the most successful hunter, or, you know, genetically he's strong and he's tall and his face is symmetrical. All of these evolutionary signals are signaling to the women in the village of the hierarchy of men, and sort of the woman wants the best possible man because it was literally life and death. So it's like, that's how they evolved. It's like, why would they be just thinking of all these other traits that are frivolous, that don't get them anywhere, when they have to figure out how are they going to survive? And so women are going to say anything. They're going to say anything and they're going to do anything to get the result that they want, because it's survival. And it doesn't matter what you believe in, what your morality is, what religion you have, what your ideals are, what your perfect situation might be. All of that goes out of the window when you're talking about survival, because it's instinctual. It overrides it all. It's like trying to stay afloat in the ocean, and with your friend, you're treading water in the middle of the ocean, and at some point you're going to drown. And before that moment of drowning, you're going to push your friend under to try and get that final breath. And it's not going to be conscious. It's not going to be like, I don't like my friend and I'm going to put my friend under the water so I can breathe. It's going to be amygdala, instinctual reaction. And so on that level, on the evolutionary level, women will always lie to get the best possible outcome. And now in the modern era, what we're dealing with is sort of women hacking into the provisions. It's like they've almost like broken into the head warrior's cave where all of the goodies are and all the provisions are, and they've crashed the party, and they've gone into the cave and they've sort of taken the best furs, and they've taken all the meat, and they've taken everything, and they're feeling like, oh, we don't need men anymore because we've got everything that men provide, because men have created a world now that is so safe and so relatively safe that it's tricking us into thinking we don't need men, because women don't understand that men are everywhere, operating all the time, the infrastructure of everything around them, and that if they did get rid of men, the whole world would shut down immediately. And that's not the case in the other way around. If women just came and went away from the workplace, the world would not shut down. The only thing would shut down is if women were, to be honest, even this of like women not having children would shut the world down. And it's like, actually, and this is not, you know, something I'm saying is a good thing, but we've seen this historically over and over again, where women end up just getting oppressed again, like actually oppressed. When women push too far on the evolution journey, and when they get too affluent and they get too free, men start to put their foot down again. And we've seen this in the Muslim community. We've seen it historically where, you know, concubines and all this stuff with women. It's like women can protest by saying we're not having kids, but at a certain point on an evolution level, men will just enforce children again. And that's not good to say, but ultimately that's the reality of what happens when things get, that's survival kicking in on the male side, on the masculine side. But with the women, they're going to, it's like when women get conquered by an oncoming army, if the army wins, the women and children assimilate into the new army, into the new conquering incoming society. The women essentially become enslaved to those men, and they've adapted that way because of evolution and survival. And so why do you think that that's just not going to be there in 2025 on an instinctual, deep, deep, deep down level? That's why women say all this stuff. I call it the beauty pageant effect, where women, you know, say, I want world peace and I just want everybody to be happy and, you know, everyone deserves somebody. And they just say all these sound bites that sound good. And then meanwhile, they're just bitching about each other behind their backs and sort of being ruthless when it comes to, you know, getting the best possible situation and outcome for their own self-interest. Women are ruthless, absolutely ruthless. And you have to understand this, men. It's time to pull back the curtain and get you to understand what's going on here. Okay? If you don't understand this and you don't accept it, you will be destroyed by a woman. Because you're going to go in with a totally wrong expectation. You're going to see her as this pure princess that could never harm a fly, and that is all about equality and love and union. And it's just bullshit. It's absolute bullshit. So moving down, self-interest. This is what I was just sort of touching on, but let's get into that more. Women are just as ruthless as men, and in some ways more so, because they do it in the shadows. They do it hidden. And so ultimately, they are human beings, flawed human beings that have desires, and they can be corrupted, and they can have wants and needs that will override their morality. And ultimately, as long as something's serving their dreams or their own life journey, they will do whatever it takes to get that. And that's why they'll lie in that aspect of things. They're going to lie in order to get the outcome that they want, okay? In order for them to maintain the whatever they're getting. Let's say they're in relationship with a man, and they see the man as the man they've decided they want to be with because he does provide for them and he is the nice guy, let's say. They will choose the nice guy for the long term, but they will not be faithful to him, okay? And they will be able to justify that in one way or another. Women they play mental gymnastics in their mind, okay? Because women don't adhere to the morals of society in the same way that men do, because women don't invent morals. They haven't invented a morality ever. They certainly haven't invented or came up with religions. Women's religion and women's spirituality, like now, for example, in 2025, it's hedonistic. It's all about feeling good, because women's metric of safety is them feeling comfortable, them feeling safe. And so if you're around a lot of women, you'll see this. And I've spent a lot of time in communities that were almost led by women when I was younger, and through my marriage, and sort of experiencing what happens when you get into like a community where women sort of run the show, and you see how quickly and how different women operate, where they gauge their success through how difficult something was to get the result, and that they're not really prepared to go through a lot of suffering to get to the end result, unless they are hyper masculine and they've sort of adopted the traits of masculinity in the way that they live, which a lot of women are, and especially like women in their 30s right now, early 30s, late 20s. There's like younger millennials, or the older Gen Zs. A lot of them have been come online with masculinity in a way that's sort of almost like proxy men. But if they're not that, they don't understand why they would feel bad. It doesn't make sense for them on an evolutionary level to feel uncomfortable. That's why, HR departments exist. It's why the temperature has to be a certain way. It's why, Me Too, all these things. It's why they need all these extra laws and provisions to protect them in the world, because the more women enter into the physical space of men, the workplace, and become more and more affluent, the more they require all these sort of addendums to the society so that they can be comfortable in it. You would never get away with that if it was just the world of the men, which it was for millennia. Men and women were separate, and women didn't work, not in the same way. They were living they spent most of their time together in large groups, looking after the children together, talking, emoting, nurturing, and the men were not around. Okay, and that's how it was until all the way up until even my parents, my grandparents. They were still very separate for the most part, and unless they were coming together at night after meals, and they would just be together in the bedroom. But other than that, they wouldn't spend much time together at all. And that actually kept things flowing and kept things good, because it's like as men, you can't spend too long around women, because if you do, you start having to assimilate into what they want. And I noticed this myself when being around these communities of feminine-led spaces, where they're very affluent, they're doing very well, they're successful, they're making a lot of money, but they do it in a way that works for them. And it just makes the men around them emasculated, because there's no space for aggression, there's no space for competition in the same way. It's all done through the mirage of virtue and sort of softness, and this sort of almost fake empathy, where they're all fronting in this very like, oh my God, I love that, I love this, like, and they don't understand why do something that's difficult when you can do it and it's easy, if you can cut a corner, and they don't see any value in that difficulty or suffering of pushing through to push beyond something that it's like, if we can just make this happen in the easiest way possible, where the most comfortable and everybody's smiling and singing Kumbaya, then let's do it. And so, as it pertains to lying, it's the same thing. It's this withholding of the truth. Women lie to each other all the time. That. It's like, you're a queen, you're a 10, they'll never call out a girl who's like overweight, because it makes them look bad. And that's what I want to move on to the final one here with it, which is optics. Okay, feminine, particularly in the modern age, is about looking good rather than being good. Okay, and that's totally different, and it's completely skewed, because the optics of the feminine virtue is all over the culture now. It's like you see it everywhere. You see it on Instagram, you see it politically, and you ultimately see it if you're in a relationship. The woman can never take accountability. She's never going to just say, you know what, you were right, I did all these things, and I'm sorry. It is very rare that you're ever going to get that from a woman, because they can't do it. Their whole, it's almost like they're all narcissists at this point, because they're all built on this image of themselves rather than what's going on underneath. They very rarely can be actually authentically vulnerable about what's really going on, and that they can take accountability and own their shortcomings in the world, because they are doing their best to survive in a world of men, first of all. So they've become hardened. That's taking them out of their femininity, and so they've become really hardened and career-based and bad boss bitch and all that stuff. And then because they've sort of adopted all of this foreign energy, which is masculinity, they then on top of that put this fake feminine front, where they sort of overtly are very feminine in the way they speak and their language, and they almost go above and beyond when it comes to positive reinforcement or compliments, or sort of looking like they're engaged with each other. Oh my God, you're so amazing, you're a queen. All this is performative femininity, because for me, they've all sort of become men underneath, and so they have to sort of overcome that or counteract it with a performance of femininity. It's almost like cosplay feminine. And what you'll find is that you'll see that surface performance, and it's very difficult to get into the meat and potatoes of a woman, a modern woman. And then if you do end up in relationship with a woman, you will discover that, but it'll come out of nowhere, and it'll only be shown every now and again. She's going to do her best to always be right, always be like, there's no need to be upset, dear. That's I call that the bank teller effect, where you're talking to, it's like if you go to McDonald's at 10:05 and they've stopped serving breakfast, and they're like, I'm sorry, sir, but breakfast stopped at 10 a.m. And you're like, it's 10:05. And they're on the script. They're running a script. And women are all running script right now. They're all running script because they're all like lemmings. They all look to each other and to Instagram, and they're all copies of a copy of a copy of a copy. And they all think the same. They all have the same values. They all wear the same clothes. They all have the same aesthetic when it comes to like their Instagram and style. It's all this weird sort of beige, Pleasantville. It's like they're all very pleasant. They're non-threatening. The ones that are trying to be feminine. I'm not talking about the purple-haired crazies. That's the flip side of the feminine, which is like the chaos side. But any woman that is in 2025, that's in her late 20s, early 30s, who's essentially cosplaying femininity, ultimately is underneath still feminist, because she's been brought up in this society, and she's been told all of her life that she is just special because she's a woman, and that you go girl, all of that stuff. And so she has to maintain that all the time, and that's optics. It's the image of femininity rather than actual femininity. And you will discover that the hard way, because it's a fantasy that they have bought into to project out into the world. And also the men, you guys, were told that these women were perfect and angels and the sweetest hearts of all. Romantic movies, all this notion in the culture has indoctrinated everybody into thinking that women are these pure souls, and they actually have to carry around that image whilst underneath being humans. And they're dealing with the conflict between the image, the persona, and their true self, which is, as a human, probably insecure at times, self-aware, self-concerned, make mistakes, guilt, shame, and sort of low resolution frequencies. that they're carrying around that they can't actually admit to, because it doesn't align with the optics of the cosplay of femininity. And so women are in this constant rub all the time. And so when you interact with them as men, it's very, very, you're always walking on eggshells, no matter what woman you're dealing with. And any little thing can set them off, because they have a set way that things are supposed to be. And if they're not that, they can't manage it. They don't know how to deal with it. And so they're just constantly lying to themselves. They're lying to each other, and they're lying to the men, because they can't possibly imagine a world where a man would love the true version of themselves, the true insecure, broken, fatherless woman that is frivolous and materialistic and narcissistic. You know, they're never going to be loved if they just revealed all of that. So they have to put on the beauty pageant effect. And whenever you're wearing a persona, particularly if you're not consciously wearing it, and it's just the persona is almost assimilated into the actual ego, if that's going on, that's a ticking time bomb for any man to go near with women. And I think that whether you're looking at the blue-haired, crazy lefties, all the way through to even most conservative women these days, most people are normies. Most women are normies. And most women have been indoctrinated into this system of feminism, whether it be overtly feminist with the lefties or even the trad wife conservatives. You know, most women today believe that their value is just within their own existence, that there is nothing really for them to do other than look good and be, you know, show up, you know. And that is insane to realize and to understand. And that as a man, you've been going along with that as well, because men were convinced of that as well. Men were like told the ultimate virtue, the ultimate purpose of a man is to get married to a woman. And once you get a woman, it sort of makes you a man. And that's couldn't be further from the truth. Your ultimate journey as men, I'm going to wrap up now, is to be sovereign in your own masculinity, and that not to be dependent on a woman, not to subserve to women. You're not here to serve women, okay? And after everything I've spoken about in today's video, why would you do that? It's a moving target, and at very best, you don't even know what is being said to you is true and what is not, because they are like next level KGB Russian spies when it comes to how they instinctually use manipulation and lying as part of their daily existence. And that is the bitter truth that you have to swallow, the bitter pill for you to swallow on this video, is that these women and women of all ages have grown up and survived through this system of lies, deceit, manipulation. That is their ultimate weapon. And so as soon as you take away the mask and you realize that this is femininity in of itself, you will get to reposition how you even deal with a woman. And you're never going to just bet the farm on a woman anymore. And I'm not saying to hate women. It's not about hating women. It's just about, you can't play the game if you don't know the rules. So this, for some of you, is going to be very difficult to accept. And for some of you, you may have even heard this before. And for some of you, you may have not heard it, but it's resonating with you. It doesn't matter. You'll find out one way or another. But once you understand that this is the reality, and that this is what women do, and this is how they play the game, you then can position yourself so that you can have success with this situation. Because I'm saying, hey, women can be fun. Women can be awesome. And women can certainly magnify your own energy when you're in your own power, okay? But they will also magnify chaos if you're not grounded, if you're not established as a man in your own life. And that if you're in your own chaos as a man, if you're being in your boy energy, a woman will magnify that, and then you'll find yourself in a lot of pain. And you've got to be very, very careful about going anywhere near a woman if you haven't first established who you are as a man. And that takes a minute for men. So you've got to just recalibrate your lives and stop being centered around this idea that your masculinity depends on finding a woman. And it's actually the opposite. Your masculinity is defined through an inside job, through your own self-forging, okay? Through sacred solitude, for example. And I'll talk about that in another video. But you have to understand this if you're going to deal with women at all. And I would suggest not going anywhere near them until you've understood that. But these are the things you need to understand, men. So remember this, all women lie. And I hope you found this video interesting and appreciate all the support. And we're going to be doing more long form here on YouTube. So it was really fun to be able to go into a bit of a deep dive on this one. And yeah, as I said, hope you enjoyed it. Join the BetterMan Academy. You can click the link down in my bio here on YouTube. Follow me on TikTok. Follow me on Instagram. It's all the same username, betterman.advice. And yeah, that's it for this one. And I'll see you on the next one, lads. All right. Peace!